7 WWE wrestlers who've done major prison time, and the reasons why. Montel Vontavious Porter. Hassan Ahmed Assad, born under the birth name of Alvin Antonio Burke Jr., is a professional WWE wrestler. He performs under the stage name MVP, which stands for Montel Vontavious Porter. He signed with WWE in 2005 and is well known for being a WWE Tag Team Champion, 2-time WWE United States Champion, and his appearances in New Japan Pro Wrestling and Total Nonstop Action Wrestling. He was also the first IWGP Intercontinental Champion. Once he completed his training with Norman Smiley and Soulman Alex G, he started wrestling for various independent promotions. But not many people know that at a very young age of 12, he became part of a graffiti gang, which developed into a street gang afterward. His involvement with the gang even landed him in a juvie detention center where he spent 6 months for a robbery, unlike the Hardy brother at the end of this video, whose troubles stemmed from substance abuse. And when MVP was just 16 years old, he was sentenced to 18 and a half years behind bars for kidnapping and armed robbery. During his time in prison, MVP converted to Islam and changed his name, though he's now an atheist. He was paroled after serving 9 years, and it was his parole officer who helped him train to become a professional wrestler. Unfortunately, his previous criminal record affects him to this day, and whenever he goes to other countries on tours, he needs to go through background checks regarding his recent behavior and have necessary permits. Wowza, I'm gobsmacked. Booker T. Robert Booker T.O. Huffman Jr., better known as Booker T, is a professional wrestling promoter and professional wrestler signed to WWE. Industry commentators and peers have named Booker as one of the top pro wrestlers of his era and has also been selected as WWE's greatest World Heavyweight Champion in 2013. Booker is a 6-time World Champion, and having held 21 titles, he's also the most awarded wrestler in the history of WCW. It's clear that the WWE Hall of Famer is one of the most prominent stars in wrestling, but before he was known as a WWE World Champion, he did have a criminal past, and he probably has the most well-known story of a wrestler who turned their life around. Back in the day, Booker used to work at Wendy's. And one day, Booker and some of his co-workers decided to rob other Wendy's locations. But as they wore their Wendy's uniforms during the heists, it was easy for authorities to figure out who the guilty parties were and track them down. Booker got a 5-year sentence for aggravated robbery, but was released on parole after serving 19 months. Booker himself has said that prison was the best thing that ever happened to him because he got a chance to stop and rethink his whole life. Hardbody Harrison. Harrison Norris Jr., better known as Hardbody Harrison, is a former WCW wrestler and one who's currently doing some major time behind bars. He wasn't particularly famous for winning matches, but rather losing them. He trained at the WCW Power Plant, a professional wrestling school, and debuted in World Championship Wrestling as a jobber in 1995. He had a few appearances, including the 97 Starrcade and WCW's Monday Night Nitro. But after WCW was purchased by WWE, Harrison's contract wasn't picked up, so he decided to retire from professional wrestling. His name won't be remembered for his professional accomplishments, though, but for the crimes that he committed. In 2005, shocking accusations were made against him, claiming that Harrison kept 8 women locked up as slaves in his home. What? As it turned out, he lured them in by promising to find housing for them and help them financially. He would then confine them in one of his homes in Cartersville. The women claimed that they were not only forced to perform chores around his home, but he also forced them to carry out inappropriate actions. And if they didn't obey him, he'd assault them and threaten their lives. If they broke his rules or they didn't complete all the tasks, the women were also obligated to pay him and ended up owing him money in a cycle that never ended. He was finally caught when the women notified the police about what was happening to them. Harrison decided to serve as his own attorney during the trial. Well, what did he have to say to the accusations made against him? Well, he insisted that the women were residing in his home because he was helping them quit controlled substances, and he was training them to become wrestlers. But despite the attempts to lie his way out of this, he received a well-deserved punishment and was sentenced to life in prison in 2007. Blackjack Mulligan. Robert DeRoy Wyndham, better known as Blackjack Mulligan, was a professional wrestler and the elder of the Wyndham wrestling family that includes his sons Kendall Wyndham and Barry Wyndham, grandsons Bo Dallas and Bray Wyatt, and son-in-law Mike Rotunda. The Hall of Famer was a powerful figure in the NWA promotions between the 60s and 80s. He'd wrestled in the Jim Crockett promotions, WWF, and held the NWA United States Heavyweight Championship. He was famous for his Iron Claw submission hold and the signature look that included a black hat, fingerless gloves, and trunks. However, Blackjack found himself on the wrong side of the law in 1990. Blackjack and his son Kendall were arrested by the U.S. Secret Service for counterfeiting, and the arrest was part of a joint investigation with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. As you may know, the situation is pretty serious when the Secret Service guys show up. Now, during the bust, the authorities found $500,000 in fake $20 bills. Both father and son served 2 years in prison prison as part of a plea deal. Mulligan later confessed in an interview that Reagan's real estate laws left him struggling financially with property, and he and a few others thought it would be an easy way to get the money. But they were wrong. Lex Luger. Lawrence Wendell Fole, better known as Lex Luger, is best recognized for his work with the World Wrestling Federation, World Championship Wrestling, and Jim Crockett Promotions. He's a WWA World Heavyweight Champion, WCW United States Heavyweight Champion, and WCW World Heavyweight Champion. He's also very popular among fans and was picked as the most popular wrestler of the year by Pro Wrestling Illustrated readers in '93. But that was until his downfall started. Like many other wrestlers, Luger became addicted to controlled substances and added quite a few arrests to his name over the years. In 2003, for instance, he was charged with a misdemeanor count of battery for assaulting his girlfriend, Elizabeth Gillette, who was known as Miss Elizabeth in the wrestling world. He was later released on bond, but got arrested a couple of days later for driving under the influence without a license. Despite the assault, the couple surprisingly stayed together until an unexpected turn of events. Miss Elizabeth passed away from an apparent overdose later that year, and it was ruled accidental. But during the search conducted in their shared home, a huge amount of illicit controlled substances were discovered. Luger was arrested and sentenced to 5 years of probation with random drug testing and was ordered to pay a $1,000 fine. Some say that he got off fairly easy, but Luger then tried to cross borders and ended up violating terms of his probation. As a result, he was sentenced to 4 months in jail with a credit of 1 month for time served. Ken Patera. Ken Patera is a retired strongman competitor, weightlifter, and professional wrestler who wrestled mainly as a heel during the 70s and 80s for the World Wrestling Federation, American Wrestling Association, and National Wrestling Alliance. Patera has always been recognized for being remarkably athletic and strong, so before becoming a successful pro wrestler, he was a highly decorated Olympic weightlifter and even won several medals. Now, Patera is not really known for causing a ruckus outside the ring. However, there is this one incident that landed him on our list. In 1984, Ken Patera was refused service at a local McDonald's in Wisconsin. The restaurant appeared to be open but was actually closed, so Patera got upset and threw a rock through a window. It's impressive what hunger can do to people. According to Patera, it was an annoyed employee that threw the rock, but he was blamed for it. However, the incident didn't end there. Patera went back to his hotel where he was staying with a fellow wrestler, Masa Sato, and when police arrived at the hotel, he and Sato started assaulting the officers who came to arrest them. 16 months after that happened, Patera was sentenced to 2 years in prison for the battery of a police officer. He was released after a year and a half on good behavior. Jeff Hardy. Jeff Hardy is a professional wrestler who's considered to be one of the most renowned superstars of this WWE generation. He's known for being a Raw Tag Team Champion and WWE Champion. Previously, Hardy had wrestled with Ring of Honor, Total Nonstop Action Wrestling, and several companies on the independent circuit. Before gaining fame in the WWE, he worked alongside his brother Matt Hardy, who was also a wrestler. They gained notoriety as the wrestling tag team the Hardy Boys. Hardy had also had a successful career as a singles wrestler. He won 6 World Championships, 5 WWE Intercontinental Championships, 3 WWE Hardcore Championships, and many others. He was given plenty of support and a huge platform by the company because he truly captured the WWE's vision. But that was until problems related to substance abuse forced WWE to release him in 2009. Throughout the years, his addiction landed him in a jail cell more than a couple times. In 2009, Hardy was arrested and charged with trafficking in controlled prescription pills, possession of controlled substances, and drug paraphernalia. After reaching a plea deal, he was sentenced to just 10 days in prison, a $100,000 fine, and probation for 30 months. But the run-ins with the law didn't stop there. He was also arrested once for public intoxication in 2019 and for driving while impaired later that year. Click on the playlist to the left to binge watch more celebrities and famous people who've rotted in jail and the reasons why. We'll see you there.